Hi.
Hi, we did it.
I don't know what was going on.
No worries. No worries. This is like yesterday when we practiced, it seemed to be going okay, but
I know, on the day of, huh? Yeah.
my gosh,
Oh, hi, Kathy. Hi, Dr. Kathy. How are you?
oh, I love it.
That's so cool.
I love it. And then actually, my husband's aunt, Patty Faloose had been on here. Hey, Kemi, we outside, girl. We outside.
Hi, Cami. Hi, Dr. Cami. How are you? It's so cool of you to join us.
Yeah. Oh my
Oh,
goodness.
man. Just when
Yeah.
you're about to do something good, little technical difficulties, huh?
Yeah. It's all good. You know what? It's like I I think at the end of the day, it's like this is how life is, right? It's like you expect one
Oh,
thing.
my gosh. Hi, Dr. Emma. Woo! It's so
Can
good to see you guys.
Oh my gosh,
Um, so would you like me to start with the introduction, Dr. Sandy?
that sounds good.
Okay. All right. So, Dr. Sandy, I'm going to say this correctly, so I'll be looking down and up, okay? Dr. Sandy is a palliative medicine doctor at the University of Chicago, or as we say, U Chicago Medicine. She did her medical school at the University of Illinois. That's where I met Dr. Sandy. And she did her residency and fellowship training in palliative care at Stanford University. So, Ivy League status, you know. She's been an assistant professor at the University of Chicago or U Chicago Medicine since 2017. And recently, this month, she was appointed as the fellowship director of palliative medicine fellowship at the University of Chicago. Woo! It's so good to have you. I appreciate your time. I'm really excited that you're joining us today on Uncommon Knowledge. Um, so, Dr. Sandy, in your own words, tell us, what do you do on a day to day? What's your job?
That's a really great question. And I just wanted to say, first and foremost, thank you so much.
Of
Thank
course.
you so much. So, for those of you watching, most of our common friends will know that we met at University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign in 2009. That was
Mm,
almost 13 years now. So it's
my gosh.
really surreal and humbling, honestly, to be here 13 years later. Um,
Mm.
Talking to my very good friend Taiwo on her on her show.
Technically, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just really honored. And then yeah, that's a really great question. And what I would say is that a lot of people are a little scared when they meet me for the first time, to be honest. They hear that I'm a palliative care doctor and they get very nervous. They say, "Oh my goodness, Dr. Toon, are you a hospice doctor?" And I always have to clarify that, hospice is a subcategory of palliative care. Palliative care is really a specialty that looks at symptoms and quality of life for people
Mm,
with serious illness. So I can be involved from the day that a person is diagnosed with their serious illness, whether it's cancer or end stage organ disease with heart failure or liver failure, kidney dysfunction, that sort of thing. So, yeah, palliative care really can be something that people can have as a part of their medical care team at the same time that they're seeing their cancer specialist or their heart specialist or whatever.
mm.
So yeah, thank you for asking that question because that is
Yeah,
a common misconception that when people meet me, they're like, "Oh my God, I must be in really bad shape."
yeah.
If a palliative care doctor is being called in, and that's not always the case.
Wow. Thank you for explaining that. Up until yesterday when we spoke, I actually thought the same thing. I thought palliative care was end of life care.
Hmm.
But you're saying that palliative care is uh, quality of life care.
Yes,
So
exactly.
just so
And
improving your life even during that difficult diagnosis.
yes, and one of the interesting things is that like people always ask me, as a funny aside, what I will say is when I go to like dinner parties or like cocktail parties or things, um, like uh, like with my husband who's not in medicine, um, people will ask me, "What do you do?"
What do you
And I
do? I'm not.
and I always have to do like the mental calculus of, do I want to tell them like, the full thing? Because it's a little bit of like a downer when I say, oh, I'm a palliative care doctor, and then I explain and
Mhm.
just latch onto the serious illness or kind of more terminal illness kind of component. And they'll just ask me like, oh my goodness, like, isn't that really depressing? And
Mm.
what I will say is, on the one hand, it can be really hard. Like, there are really hard days in my job where I am seeing really tragic cases, like really young folks, or even like older folks who, they are really struggling with their illness and they're really struggling with their day to day. And it's really heartbreaking when you see that. And so that can be really hard. And I know that one of the things we want to, discuss today is about self-care. So that's really something that I have to practice what I preach. Otherwise,
Mhm.
burn out. But the interesting thing is, like, going back to the cocktail party thing, um, when people say like, isn't that hard? The honest truth is, yes, on the one hand it is, but on the other hand, honestly, Taiwo, like, when once we like rip off that band-aid of talking about you know illness, and we rip off that band-aid of talking about getting older or getting sicker, and we kind of face those realities, it becomes less a conversation about death and dying and illness, and it actually becomes a conversation about living. Because
Mhm.
it's so fascinating and powerful how clarifying these kinds of like emergency situations can be, when all of a sudden like a
Mhm.
person is told like you have very advanced cancer, or you have really advanced heart failure, or whatever. All of a sudden, like, they it really clarifies people on what's important.
Right,
Yeah,
perspective change. Right.
exactly. So it's actually a really powerful thing, where I've heard people tell me things, Taiwo, like they'll say things like I understand that I have a really bad disease, and then they talk about, quote unquote, their bucket list, where even if
Mhm.
they like, we think that you have on the order of years ahead of you, it still clarifies them to say like, I thought I had decades ahead of me, but because now I think we're talking on the order of like maybe a few years to 5 years, maybe 10 years if we're lucky. People say things like, I want to take that trip. I want to take that trip to Paris, or
Mhm.
I want to spend time with my loved ones, or I want to make amends with
Mhm.
someone that
Mhm.
I hurt. So it's
Mhm.
a really clarifying thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's remarkable. That's remarkable. It refocuses people,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, it allows them to focus on what's important to them, valuable
Yes.
relationships, valuable projects, maybe things that they've always wanted to do that they've put off.
Yes.
So go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like, the fascinating thing is also, it's like, I've never heard anyone facing illness or worsening life circumstances say things like, man, I wish I'd worked more shifts at work, or I wish I hadn't spent so much time with my family. Like, no one's ever said that.
Mm,
Or like,
mm,
like, no one's ever regretted not finishing that like work project. Things people
right.
regret is not being genuine to themselves and not being
Mm,
honest with people in their lives, both good and bad. Like, whether it's standing up to someone who's, not been kind to you, or not speaking up more and telling people like my friend, Dr. Taiwo Durowade, saying thank you, thank you for an important part of my life.
mm, mm. That's truly remarkable because it's about living. It's about improving your quality of life. It's about enjoying your life even when you're faced with something difficult. That's a
Absolutely.
remarkable field you're in. And I'm not surprised you're in that field. I'm not surprised that's the field you chose because I remember the first time I got to know you really well. I was this little shy, petite medical student. I was always sort of doing things alone. I hope I don't start crying again because, this happened yesterday.
It's okay. I was going to say, in my line of work, a lot of tears from patients, family members. I cry with patients, so don't worry. It's like, I'm ready. I'm ready.
I think I should have had my tissue next to me. Um, and what I feel that I learned from you is the value of community. I was so used to, I would study alone. I'd be in the library alone. I'd go to my dorm alone. And then when I was struggling, I learned that there was like a study session going on. And I came to the study session and you were teaching it. You were teaching embryology. I did not know anything about embryology, no matter how much I read, how much I studied. And you were teaching embryology. And I sat there and it felt as if you were teaching just me. It felt as if I was the only, oh my God, I think I'm going to start crying. Woo, okay. It felt as if it was just me, you were teaching. I probably learned more about embryology than all the other ones I knew myself, right? Because of how meaningful that experience was for me. How you notice people, how you acknowledge people, how it's like you see them. It's like you see them, you notice them. It's so valuable because it takes you out of what you're going through and it puts you in that space of, okay, I'm going to thrive here. And that's literally how you impacted my life in medical school. And so I'm not surprised that that's what you're doing with your life because it looks like that's your that's your calling. Oh my gosh, I'm crying.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And it's one of those things where I just want to name out loud that, like, right back at you. Like, a community doesn't happen with just one person. So thank you for opening up your heart to me. And what I will say is, in the same way that you described yourself, I was I was this I'm still like, I was describing to you, Taiwo, that I'm like a golden retriever puppy. I'm just like, hi, you want to be my friend? Please love me. Like, if you can imagine someone who is very, very overly enthusiastic, that was me then, and that's me. Oh.
It's amazing because it's like we're polar opposites, right? I'm not overly enthusiastic, but that enthusiasm was what impacted me. I didn't even know I needed that, but that really impacted me and brought me out of my shell, made me more part of that community, and really helped me to thrive. And so I wanted to, I pointing that out, I think remembering that makes me understand why this is the best field for you. It's like you bring out the best in people, even when they're going through something difficult. So I truly appreciate that.
Yeah, that means so much to me. And quite frankly, I just want on video also the testimonial here. I'm here to testify that Dr. Taiwo Durowade, you have such an amazing heart and an amazing spirit, and you have the best laugh. And half the time, me just being goofy is just to make you laugh, because you literally have the most joyful, genuine laugh.
Thank you, Sandy. Sometimes I think it's too loud, but
well, those people are those people that think that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So I want to channel, your expertise today in how to thrive, how to deal you're going through something difficult. How do I thrive in this situation? And I wanted to touch on a couple things. Oh, thank you, Dr. Emma.
For those of you watching, I was going to say, Dr. Emma Oliveira, she has an interview with you coming up August.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Maybe we'll make it an Instagram live too, because I know Dr. Emma is pretty good at this. So I was reading something yesterday about, so one of the things I wanted to touch on, and please add to this, for going through a difficult situation is having meaningful relationships. And that's why I brought up that being part of a community, because it really helped me to thrive when I was struggling in medical school. Mm-hmm. And, just going on in life, things will happen, right? Mm-hmm. And, one of the things I find that helps people to thrive is having that meaningful relationship that supports you in the moment, that gives you the kind of support you're looking for. Now, there are many kinds of relationships. We already have relationships in our lives. We have mm-hmm. friends, we have family. But sometimes we find that maybe we're not able to lean on those people, even during those times. Mm-hmm. So having other people, you know. I mean, it's not like I talk to you every day, but every time I talk to you, maybe every 3 months, or we see each other at Navy Pier or something, it's like I'm rejuvenated, I'm refreshed because you know that meaningful relationship has poured into my life. I don't know if you can speak to that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for speaking to that. And what I will say is that, at the end of the day, I think we're all looking for family, whether it is biological family or it's the family we're given or the family we choose, and
Mm,
people look for it everywhere. It manifests because we're a very social species.
mm,
That
mm,
need for family and belonging manifests in so many different ways. So in good ways, in the sense
mm,
that we come together and we create, we're part of sports teams or
mm,
parts of clubs, or parts of faith communities, where we come together and we have a common purpose. In other ways too, like it manifests in ways that are less healthy. Like for instance, because people want a sense of belonging, sometimes they can be very anxious, quite frankly, about rejection. And honestly, like I think it's something that they've actually studied where they ask people what their greatest fears are, and it's like, yeah, it's like people are afraid of like death and dying, but actually the number one fear, in this one study that they came across from this large survey, was public speaking. And I thought that was so fascinating because honestly I'm one of them. Like I have a lot of public speaking anxiety,
mm,
mainly because I think there's always an anxiety that we all have about being rejected or about people,
mm,
thinking that we're not smart enough or good enough. So
mm,
there's always
mm,
that
mm,
kind
mm.
of anxiety that's
Oh
there.
yeah, putting yourself out there. Yeah,
Exactly, exactly.
yeah.
I think like social anxiety too, like when people feel this sense of like, oh, like what do people think of me? That's again, that's this deep-seated fear that we'll be rejected and we won't be
Mm,
part of the
mm,
group. And it goes back to when we were, cavemen, cave people, like in prehistoric times, where if you weren't part of the group, like it was less likely that you were going to survive by yourself
mm.
out, out in the wilderness by
In the
your.
wild.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Coming back to that community piece, I think it is important for all of us to figure out, what does community look like for us? And then another piece in all of that, I would say as well, Taiwo, is that, um, you know, all of us have different levels of need for level and
Mm.
social interaction. And I think it comes down to extrovert, introvert type, um,
Personalities.
exactly, exactly. Because for instance, one of the things you and I had talked about, and one of the things I talk about with my husband Aaron is that, I'm an extrovert. I'm like a very very overt extrovert, and like a lot of it comes down to, so people will say like I don't know which I am. Sometimes it may be that you're a combination. It depends on the situation. So you could be an ambivert, so like ambidextrous, both.
Mhm.
Um, but you can ask yourself. So a quick question people watching can ask themselves is, how do I feel after a social event or a social gathering or event, for instance, with a lot of strangers? So it's one thing to go to a social event where it's a lot of people but how do you feel after you go to, I don't know, like a cocktail party or something where, or like a conference where you
I
meet a lot.
feel thank God that's over. So I feel
And that's actually.
so I'm the introvert.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it's not like, it's not. I would say it's not like black and white because it can change
Right,
depending
right.
how.
Depending on the
Yeah,
situation.
but
Right.
exactly, it's like, whereas for me, like after like an event where I get to meet a lot of new people, I'm like energized. I'm like
Yeah.
bouncing off the walls because I'm so like
No.
energized. But like, but depending on if I'm like stressed or if I'm tired, I become less like that.
Mm,
So it's
mm,
also
mm,
dependent. Like I can be a little bit of an ambivert depending on if I'm stressed.
mm, mm,
So it's not necessarily black or
mm.
white. So when we think about that self-care piece, when we think about like our day to day, I think we have to think about like what recharges us. Like you and I were chatting yesterday about what we do at the end of our work days. So I would love to hear a little bit more, Taiwo, about what your self-care looks like.
Mm, mm. Well, one of the things that made me start crying yesterday, Dr. Sandy, is that the first thing you said to me, I really need to go grab a tissue.
It's okay.
The first thing you said to me, and I don't think we had spoken for like or seen each other since when was it? Last summer, a year ago.
It was we
Wow.
Day and I went met up at Navy Pier last summer.
Yeah, it was last summer. I can't believe it's been a year.
Yeah.
So one of the things you said to me was you just acknowledged me. You said, "You're doing a fantastic job. You're so awesome. You just again, you just poured into me." And I just started crying.
You are. You are.
What I do for self-care is after everyone has left the office, I turn off all the lights and I just sit in the dark. I just sit down in the dark because, like I said, after interacting with patients all day, interacting with my staff all day, I feel like, and going straight home and interacting with my family, it's like I'm being pulled. I'm just being pulled in different places. And so when everyone has gone home, when all the staff has left, I just turn off all the lights and I sit in the dark. And either I fall asleep while I do that, or either I meditate. I'm a believer, I'm a Christian, so I've written down some Bible verses, and I'll just stick to that one Bible verse that is speaking to me in the moment, and I would read it over and over and over again. Lately it's the one about, I will guide you in the way you should go. And so, running a business, learning this new part, so I just sat there and I just thought, okay, God will guide me the way that I should go. God will guide. And I do that over and over and over. And I just sit there. And then by the time I'm leaving, I'm energized.
Mm,
I'm pumped up. Like, okay, God is guiding me in the way that I should go. I'm like, that energizes me, to just have that alone time before I go home and I have to interact with everyone else at home too, because that gives me energy to do that. I realize that if I don't do that, if I just finish work, go to this appointment, go home, I start becoming sluggish.
mm,
My things that usually come easily to me, they don't. I'm slower at them. I'm forgetting things. I'm disorganized. I'm impatient. I'm not as it's not as fun to be around me. And then I start wondering, what's up? What is? And
mm,
then I sense, oh, you haven't spent time alone. You haven't spent time
mm,
alone with God. You haven't spent time alone with yourself. You haven't meditated. And so I retreat back to my space
mhm,
to just allow myself to be recharged so I have enough to give, you know.
mhm.
Mm.
Thank you so much for your vulnerability and sharing with
Can't
all of
believe
us.
I'm crying on the internet.
No, it's okay. No, I mean, at the end of the day, like I'm a big believer in like at the end of the day, like vulnerability is so powerful. Like as much as people
Mm,
I like many folks will say like, "Oh my gosh, I feel so embarrassed that I'm crying," but I will just
mm,
tell them it takes a lot of courage to share, the tenderest parts of you. So thank you for your courage.
mm,
And
mm. Oh, you're gonna make me cry again.
oh,
It's
I
that constant acknowledgement. Honestly, Sandy, I think my love language is notice or acknowledgement because every
yeah.
time you speak to me, it's like the first thing you say to me. You acknowledge me, even if it's little. Even if it's like I picked up your pen. You're like, oh my God. Thank you,
Yeah.
Taiwo. That pen, you just picked it up. I'm so appreciative. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, that acknowledgement, that I see you, I notice you, um, I think is a gift that makes you the special doctor you are and makes you a gift to the people that you care for. I want you to know that.
Thank you. And what I that,
Yes, she
at the end
is,
of the day,
Dr. Kemi. She is awesome.
yeah. Cami, Dr. Cami, Dr. Taiwo, you guys are awesome. And I will just say, like we were talking yesterday, about like love languages, and it is interesting.
Mhm,
It's like we all have different ways that we appreciate being loved and showing
mhm,
our love and affection for other people too. And it doesn't have to be like romantic love. It can be familial love, like platonic friendship love. But
mhm,
yeah, I mean, I'm a very verbal person. Like that other
mhm,
people have pointed that out before, and it's just I realize that it's like I like telling people what they mean to me, and I like hearing it too. So thank you for filling my
mhm.
cup. Um, my love language. So thank you. But we talked also about, there's other love languages like quality time,
Mhm.
acts of service. So for instance, like, there are people in my life who like you know, words of affirmation aren't necessarily there, something that feels natural to them, but they're amazing people who will do kind things. Like they'll, wash dishes, or they'll send, I don't know, like
Mhm.
send like a nice gift, or they'll come and they'll, take,
I think that's still part of noticing,
yeah,
right?
yeah, that's,
So, the dishes haven't been washed because you're so busy doing something. That's
yeah,
like, I'm just gonna wash it.
yeah,
I think the overall effect of, and I think it ties back to community, right?
yeah,
The overall effect of love is noticing,
yeah.
serving, and honoring, You notice the person, okay, I noticed that Sandy hasn't done this in a while. Maybe she needs help doing it. So that's the acts of service. Oh, I noticed that Sandy's stressed out. I'm going to buy her a gift. That's the gift giving part of love. So I think everything ties around to community and feeling loved in that community.
Yeah.
So just like you said, finding what family looks like to you. What it might not be your actual family. It might be
Mhm.
friends, it might be colleagues, it might be mentors, you know, having a community that pours love into you.
Mhm.
That is going to help you through whatever difficult situation you're going through. And then,
Yeah.
sorry, did you want to add to that? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that, like, at the end of the day, I completely agree with you. I think we have to find what family and community look like for each of us. And I will make an important caveat too that, at the end of the day, some people will tell me, you know, some people will make mention like, this person is this X, Y, and Z person to me, whether it's a parent or a sibling or cousin, aunt, whoever, their family. And so, you know, even if they have
They,
behavior, like even if
Mhm.
they're abusive, quite frankly, I have
Mhm.
to, suck it up and, allow them into my life. And what I will say is that I hear that sentiment, and I would say that there's always a caveat to that, in the sense that, yes, if you want to continue to allow these people who are hurtful into your life, that's a choice. Having said that, you don't have to. You have the right to put boundaries. And sometimes that boundary means that that person, whoever they are to you, whether they're a parent, a sibling, a cousin, you have to hold them a little bit at arm's length, where you have to say that, like, this is boundaries. And I love this quote. It's like, boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and I at the same time. And
Mm,
that's
mhm, mm,
important for me, because I'm definitely a people pleaser. Like, that's a part of like my
mm,
wiring, that like I've had to learn over time that you have to have boundaries
mm,
with even your loved ones, even people that are related to you by blood.
mhm.
You have to have boundaries. So
Thank-
that's a part
Yeah,
of the self-care too. You can't
yeah,
just
yeah.
pour out until there's nothing left. So
Left.
you always have to find ways to recharge and refill that cup.
Oh, thank you, Talani. I see your comment. Thank you so much. So speaking of that, in the meaningful relationships part, so your support system, like you said, can include people that are not supportive in the right way or loving in the right way. And so the boundaries part, I feel also, let's say you can't put them at arm's length, right? The boundaries part, I think, is learning how to navigate
Mm-hmm.
being with that person. So it might be that um, you don't engage,
Mm-hmm.
you don't engage in that back and forth conversation that can lead to a shouting match. Or
Mm-hmm.
it could be that you let things go. You're like, you know what? I don't like what you did, but that's okay. I would
Mm-hmm.
prefer you did it differently,
Mm-hmm.
and if they don't accept it, at least you've asserted yourself.
Yes.
So just like you said, so the community,
Mm-hmm.
and then the self-care. The self-care is taking a moment to focus on yourself to recharge, and but also setting boundaries with the people in your life so
Yeah.
that they don't add on to the stress that you're already going through.
Absolutely. And I think so much of this comes down to, knowing yourself, like
Ah,
that. At the end of the day,
Excellent point.
at the end of the day, in the same way that you've just shared really powerfully, Dr. Taiwo, that you focus on what refills your cup, what
Mm,
recharges, and you say that I have to be intentional.
mm,
Self care has to be very intentional, and it has to be very.
mm, mm,
And so it's very nice to say, oh, I practice self care, but you have to really answer the question, what does self care look like for me? So for you, it looks like I need to have some solitude. It doesn't
mm.
have to
Yeah.
be days long, it can be, half an hour, a couple hours maybe. Like
Mhm,
it's just however long I need to kind of recharge and
mhm,
touch base with myself. And for you, faith and spirituality is something
mm,
that
mm,
gives you
mm,
strength, and that's a beautiful thing. And I
mhm,
think that that's a wonderful thing for folks, whether
mhm,
it's whatever flavor of faith and spirituality. I think that's really important.
mhm,
And yeah, like at the end of the day, you have to take time to make time. Like I said, the thing that, like, when I think about things that people regret when they are facing serious illness or the end of life, many folks will say, like, I wish I had spent more time on things I was passionate about. And
mm,
it is something that, when I think about what you've just, what you've shared so kindly when you said, Sandy, like, I think that you are good at what you do. That means so much to me, because
mhm,
our working lives are so much a big part of who we are and our day to
yeah.
day. And what I will say is that it's a lot of time to spend if it's not something you're really loving. And
Mm,
so it's a
mm.
privilege. I will be first and foremost to say it
Right,
is a
right,
privilege
right, right. So people
to be
have
able
to
to
do
do
the
what you
jobs
love.
they're doing. Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's also takes courage to pursue what you love too. So for instance, I want to give a shout out to you, just because my love language is verbal. And where is that, Dr. Taiwo, in starting Darter Medical Group,
Mhm,
you have you have taken this leap of faith where you have said,
uh,
I will have the courage to do what feels right to me, to practice medicine in a way that feels authentic and genuine
mhm,
to me. And
absolutely.
that takes strength and that takes courage, because, as you and I were talking about, there's so many logistical struggles and challenges
Mm,
running your own
mhm,
medical practice, whether it's billing, malpractice,
mhm, mhm,
what have you. Like,
mhm.
so for what
Staff management, managing your staff, payroll, everything,
everything.
finances,
Yeah,
everything.
you
Yeah,
are
yeah.
not only a physician and a daughter, a sister, a friend, an amazing person. You're also a small business owner, and you
Yeah.
are you are out you outside, you hashtag outside girl. Hmm. You're making it happen, and I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of you. I really am.
Thank you, Dr. Sandy. So, what do you do for self-care? How do you practice self-care?
So for me, what I will say is I am definitely much more, most of the time, on that introvert extrovert kind of spectrum. Most of the time I am more on like the high, like moderate to high, like extrovert kind of level. So I like having contact. And so, for instance, for me, it's a lot of like either talking on the phone with loved ones, spending time with my husband. Like, often at the end of the day, I will just like talk to him about like things that are going on in my life. Um,
That's
I'm just
so amazing. It's so stark.
yeah, no, no. I'm laughing because at the end of the day, Aaron, even though he's not an extrovert per se, he's so kind in the sense that he loves hearing about what's going on in my life. He's very patient, and then I always give him the tea. I'm like, Aaron, can you imagine what this person did? So Aaron, if anyone's wondering, and then what I will say also is that I like. Um, I mean, like, I like to read, and I like to, spend time with loved ones, even virtually. So even when we're like messaging each other, sending each other like funny pictures, like funny memes, like that
Mhm.
for me is recharging because it makes me laugh.
Wow,
And
wow.
the other piece that that I like to do, and you and I had talked about before, is that I like to do a little bit of mindfulness practice too. So
Mm.
that's another piece.
Yeah. Share that with us. What is mindfulness?
So I'm glad you asked. And what I will say is that oftentimes when people hear mindfulness, they say, oh my goodness, that's like meditation where you have to go to a retreat and it's like
Mm.
expensive and you have to spend like hours like meditating, and I can't do that. And
Mhm.
what I will say is that there's different types of meditation. There's like the big M mindfulness, which is actually like you sit and you have like dedicated time, and you have to like really practice kind of clearing your mind and all of that. But there's
Mm.
also little m, like lowercase m mindfulness, which is just throughout your day, just taking stock of where you are and becoming aware. Because yes, big M mindfulness, it's helpful to have someone to teach you, and people will say, I don't have time for that. I don't have the money to pay for that. And I will say on YouTube, there's a lot of great free kind of guided meditation things that you could just like have that playing, and it can be as long or as short as you want. So there are like 10-20 minute meditation, guided meditation, but there's also like short, like 1 to 2 minute, 5 minute meditation type videos too. So that's the big M, formal meditation. And then the informal kind of mindfulness, I think, really has to do with taking stock of where you are. So for instance, even just becoming aware of the different sensations. So we have five senses where you can see, you can smell, you can hear, you can touch. I'm missing one sense, but there's
Taste,
different
taste,
taste
taste.
and taste too. And so, for instance, it's like, for instance, when you have like water or coffee, you can do the practice of just stopping and just doing a body scan where you actually will drink it and you will say, I feel the warmth of the coffee. I
Wow.
feel the sensation of the mug. I can taste the coffee. I can feel the warmth of it. I can see the color of my mug or the color of the coffee if it's an open mug. And I can smell it, so you're using all of your senses. And even in that like 30 seconds to 1 minute, you have practiced mindfulness. And sometimes
Wow.
it's so important because um, as one of the things I've done in the last 5 years since starting at University of Chicago is I've started to do more mindfulness work. And one of the things I just realized more and more is that it's possible to like incorporate it. So for instance, Taiwo, when you drive to work, are there days when you show up at work and you're like, I don't even remember the drive?
Mm. Yes.
A lot of us will have that sensation. Even for instance, like at University of Chicago, they have like a parking garage, like a parking deck. And there will be some days where I'm like, I don't even remember where I parked because I might have had to park
Mm.
the rooftop area. I might have had to park in like a different kind of spot. And I will come out and I'll be like, oh crap, I forgot where I parked. And it's just one of those things where in the moment I started doing this mindfulness where as I parked my car, I would, Kemi's saying the same. She and I University of Chicago. And yes, we have two different parking lots or parking garages, and I always forget which floor I parked on. But one of the things I will do sometimes, Taiwo, is I will in the moment, I will just say, I'm gonna forget where the parking, like where my parking is. So I will look around and I will in that moment I will make myself present where I will say, I see this car or this structure, I see this sign, I and I will try to incorporate my senses. So I hear certain things, I see certain things, I smell certain things. I'm probably not tasting anything, but it's like it's trying to
You
use
know,
your senses.
yeah. So you know what that reminds me of? Is something called grounding exercises.
I love that.
So where you're faced with something difficult. You are, let's say you're having a conversation with someone and it's getting tense, right?
Hmm.
It's getting a little bit, and so a way to ground yourself is to become aware of, let's say, aware of how you're holding your shoulders, aware
Yes.
of how you're breathing. And
Hmm.
that I've been told, I need to actually practice it. That I've been told allows you to get out of that fight or flight response that you're currently feeling.
Yes.
that
Yes.
helps you to ground yourself and maybe get a different perspective. Now, like you said, you have to be intentional about that. You have
Yes.
to practice because then you can build that muscle. Because if you don't, it's not going to come naturally to you. It's something you have to it's a practice of mindfulness in a stressful situation. But you practice that before you're in a stressful situation, right?
Hmm.
You use all your senses to taste. Like you're present when you're eating. You're not just eating
Yeah.
and watching TV. You're tasting the food. You're smelling the food. You're sensing how hot it is on your tongue or in your mouth. You're feeling it go down your throat. Like being present,
Hmm.
being present in every moment that you're in, and that helps build your muscles so you can ground yourself in harder
Yeah.
situations.
What I will say is that I'm not here to say that I'm perfect at it. There are definitely
Mhm.
days when I will forget where I parked, or I won't have, a sense of mindfulness. I'll like show up at work and it's like, oh crap, I wasn't mindful. Like during this drive, I just went into autopilot, and I
Mhm.
was I was aware enough to like, be safe, but I wasn't
Mhm.
like taking stock. So
Yeah.
there are, it takes practice. And just like you said, it's like a muscle. Mindfulness is like it is a skill. It is a muscle that you have to practice. And I will be the first to say there are times when, as I'm eating, I am not paying attention, and like I'll finish like a sandwich or a bowl of food, and then I'll be like, I just like wolf that down just to eat, and I didn't actually enjoy the experience, or I didn't actually. So I try to push myself a little bit more, where I say, and one of the things that can be helpful is like putting away your phone. I actually love that. Aaron, my husband, actually will say like, we're not going to have like music on or anything. We're going to talk. But it's helpful, because instead of looking at my phone as I'm eating, I will just, we'll put our phones down. We'll put it away, put it on silent or whatever. The TV won't be on. There isn't music on. So we'll just like focus on what we're eating and like what we're, just, each other, which is
Mhm.
actually really important, because otherwise
Absolutely.
it is too much like sensory overload. I think that's where, like, like you talk about how, an extrovert like myself can be helpful, but that's where actually introverts like Aaron or like you are actually really important, and a really important balancing
Balance, right.
effect in my life, because I actually love that, since meeting Aaron like 6 years ago now, like I've been more intentional about like when we eat, or a lot more present with each other.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
that's
that's
a good.
amazing. So that again ties back to community, right?
Yeah.
Ties
Yeah.
back to self-care, you know,
Yes. Yeah.
self-care.
Yes.
And ties back to, to be loved, like I said at the beginning, to be loved is to notice. You have to
Hmm.
be present, right, to notice somebody. And
Hmm.
then you have to honor and serve to help that person to feel loved.
Hmm.
And so that, and hopefully that's reciprocated, right? And that's how you can thrive even if something, something bad is going on.
Yeah. And what I
Mm.
will just say is, on this, interaction, I will just name kind of the elephant in the room for everyone too, which is
Mm.
COVID. We've been living since
Mm.
2020. We've all been living through unprecedented times, like one after another, whether it's due to, the political climate in our country. And I'm not going to get into it because it's just stressful, but it's one of those things where, like, between the pandemic and the political climate in our country, and climate change, it's a stressful time. And I'm not here to say that, mindfulness is, the silver bullet that cures all your problems. Like, I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is that there's a lot of different things in our toolbox that we should have in order to take care of ourselves in times that are so traumatizing, you know?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
in our lives, that we all have our, there's, in Christian faith, there's the expression, we all have our cross to bear. And it's true, in the sense that we all have our struggles, and sometimes they're visible. Like, you see someone that has, physical reasons why they're struggling. Sometimes, it's invisible. It's more of the internal kind of struggles that you have as well. So it's one of those things where what I will say is that I try to have compassion, even when that person cuts me off on late.
Mm.
I'm like, okay, that person must be having a hard day and they just don't know how to
Oh,
drive.
Sandy, I think that, you know how, I think that that is what makes you special
Oh,
because we take things personally. Maybe I should speak for myself and not generalize.
I do too, girl. I do too. I
We
take things
take things
personally.
personally. So when that person cuts you off on the highway, I'm not thinking, oh, that person's having a hard day, that person's late to work. I'm thinking how, but mindfulness, right? Part of that is having compassion. Part
And
of that,
yeah.
go ahead.
And I was just saying, it's like you have to have self-compassion too, because
Mm.
I have a little bit of a temper. People who, like, she has a really big temper, but it's like sometimes when, like, injustice and bullying makes me very upset. So when people hurt people
Those
that I
are those
like,
are things
yeah,
to be upset about. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like I say that, have compassion, even like when you're driving, but it's okay also to you yourself having a bad day and being like, that person's a jerk, or other words.
Right.
But
It's okay to express how you feel as
yeah.
well. Your feelings are valid. So I think that not suppressing this I've learned late,
Hmm.
not suppressing how you feel. Okay, something difficult is going on. I feel bad about this. I feel upset. I feel angry. Express those feelings. Like say them out. Say
Yes.
them out loud. Don't
Yeah.
keep them in and say I'm feeling this, but
Yeah.
not saying it. So part of self-care, I would say, for someone like me who is I need that solitude. I need that. I find that I do not say what I'm feeling or how I'm feeling. I don't express it.
Mhm.
I express it all in my solitude. I evaluate it all when I'm alone but you need to say that out loud so that people around you also know how to help you, because then people around me don't know what's going on with me and they're like, you know, they're either reacting to how I'm feeling, but they
Mhm.
don't know what I'm feeling. So when I say,
Mhm.
I'm stressed out because of this, then there's more compassion. Then
Yeah.
there's more understanding versus
Yeah.
them trying to figure it out and walking on eggshells. So I think part of that community is not just you receiving from people. Remember I said, oh, to go through a difficult situation, you need a community, you need to feel loved. It also comes from you. You
Mhm.
have to express yourself, express your needs.
Mhm.
Tell them what you need. I need understanding from you. I need a little bit more patience from you.
Yeah.
This thing is really stressing me. It might not seem that big to you, but it's really bothering me. I
Yeah.
need you to also take this seriously so asserting yourself in the community you've chosen to have that meaningful relationship, expressing your needs to that meaningful support system,
Mhm.
right? And doing your part in making sure that you're loved and they're loved. I think is a I keep harping on that community thing
No,
because
it's true.
it made a big impact. It made a big impact for me.
And
And
yeah.
knowing yourself, like you said, knowing yourself so you know how you need to recharge, how
Mhm.
you need to what recharges you, and being intentional about doing that, making that time to do that. Sorry, go
One
ahead.
is that I just love so much of what you've shared with me and what we've been able to share with each other, which is that, and I love that. Just to piggyback off of what you've said, like, you are 100% right when you say you have to be really you have to be really honest with yourself. There are some times when I think, as women too, and this can be a completely, I know our time together is running short, but we can have a completely different Instagram live on talking about, the different challenges, including, being a woman, being a woman of color, being a woman
Mhm.
old, like in medicine. What I will just say is that you have to like, you have to really be thoughtful to yourself as well, because, I'm talking about these things, like being mindful, being present, being genuine, being honest with yourself and others. And I'm still practicing. I'm still a work in progress. And I think everybody's a work in progress. I think anyone who says, yeah, I figured it out is probably a little about
A little not truthful to themselves.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And so we always have things we can work on. I know that I'm not always the best at communicating what my needs are, but I know it's important, and I want to continue trying. And to to just to piggyback off of what you said as well, Taiwo, when you said like, oh, well, community is something I needed. And what I will say is it's something everybody needs. What
Everybody.
if like one other person or two other people, it doesn't have to be like a big, it's more about quality more than quantity, I would say, of people in
Mhm.
your circle. And you can have different like levels of circle. Like you can say like,
Mhm.
my inner circle is maybe 4 or 5 people that I really love and who know, the most intimate details of what's going on in my life. And then because of boundaries, I put people at different kind of, you know, different
Mm.
rings. Like
Different
ring of
lengths. Right, right, right.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I think someone commented knowing yourself is important. I absolutely love this conversation. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Telani. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, so just to recap, how to thrive, how to still enjoy your life even when you're going through something difficult, meaningful relationships, right? And within that, asserting yourself, knowing yourself,
Yeah,
expressing your needs, and having it be reciprocal. And then
absolutely. And I would say meaningful relationships with yourself too.
with
So
yourself.
sometimes you have to like, you know, court yourself a little bit. It's like take
Mm,
yourself
mm,
out of
mm,
it. Like,
mm,
it's like
mm, mhm,
make
mhm.
myself coffee or I'm gonna let myself have a nap. Like, being knowing yourself might be like, I'm actually tired and I probably do need a nap. So it doesn't have to be, flowery. Like you don't have to buy
Mm.
a gift. It can be as simple as something small even like
I'm gonna let myself eat that ice cream.
yeah,
Let's say it's a weight loss journey. I'm a physician. I shouldn't encourage this, but but
it's balanced. It's balanced.
mm, mm, mm. Even if it's a weight loss journey, I'm gonna let myself have that ice cream. I'm gonna let myself, like you said, I'm gonna let myself take a nap. I'm gonna let myself not do so much. I'm not gonna do that much today. I'm not going to sweep up the house and keep it clean. I'm going to leave things as they are and just rest today. Just
Yes.
yeah, having that compassion for
Yeah.
yourself.
And it's one of those things where it's always a balance, because things have to get done. We have to, yeah, being responsible adults in the world, we have to pay our taxes, we have to go to work.
Mhm.
So I'm not saying that you should just, let
Right,
go of
right. We're not saying be
all.
irresponsible.
No, but at
Yeah,
the
right.
same time, it's saying be intentional about putting time into your day. And some days are going to be imbalanced. Like work-life balance is a myth. Like in the sense of like each day isn't always going to be perfectly balanced. Like, 50% work, 50%, personal stuff. Some days it's like 90% work and like only 10% personal stuff. And some days it's the opposite. It's 90% personal stuff, 10% work. But it's one of those things where you just want your weeks and your months and your years to balance out where you are bending with how the winds of change come. Like you
Mm,
want to be flexible but you also want to have some sort of firmness.
sure, sure.
Think about like there's that analogy where if like a tree that's very rigid in like a very heavy wind will just fall, it won't. And then on the opposite end, like a tree that has no structure, it's like a bush or something, will just be broken. It doesn't have
Mhm.
any structure, it won't spring back up. But like a tree that has some suppleness to it, some flexibility, it'll like bend with the wind. But then once the winds have changed, it'll kind of come back to its, normal kind of thing. So it's easier said than done. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but I'm trying.
No, I think it's important, like you said, to that have compassion for yourself. Like cut yourself some slack,
Yeah.
Especially for someone like me, I'm a doer, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. I have a to-do list. I have if things aren't getting done, I'm flustered, but some days I'm just like, I need to cut myself. So I need to just stop doing so much. And those are the
Yeah.
days that, I find out that I'm missing things. I'm forgetting things. I'm slower because I haven't given myself room, to recuperate, basically.
Mm.
So community, self-care, right? And the self-care can be, like you said, cutting yourself some slack, getting some solitude, knowing yourself, knowing what recharges you.
Yep.
Um, the big M meditation or the small M mindfulness, grounding exercises, being present when you're eating, being present when you're eating with your loved ones, putting the phones away, having a conversation with your kids, having a conversation with your teenagers, with your sister, your family, or whoever it is you're having, lunch or dinner with at the time. Being present, it is part of self-care, and it's going to help build more. I keep going back to this, build more meaningful relationships
Yeah.
that will help you thrive in difficult situations. I
Yeah.
mean, I've had a therapy session right here, Dr. Sandy.
Well, right back at you. I think it's always therapeutic when you reconnect with people who you love and who care about you. So thank you so much for this. And for what
Um,
it's worth, I am so glad to be your, you know, to have invited. So thank you. I'm so honored.
no, absolutely. I truly thank you for suggesting making it an Instagram live. The introvert in me that was not my original plan.
I
So,
you killed it, girl. Hashtag
oh
killed.
my God.
That
See,
is it.
that's the acknowledgement. That acknowledgement. You know how to just make me feel like the best thing since sliced bread.
You're natural. You're natural. No, I mean it.
Oh, Dr. Sandy, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I've learned so much, and I truly value you. And hopefully, we can continue this.
Sounds good. All right.